One of the challenges we will be facing in the years ahead, which is an inherent feature of the shift, is the threat posed to us by what I refer to as the dark side. As I stated at the outset, it is imperative we have an understanding of this, because if we don't, the picture we're painting here won't make sense. A vital piece will be missing. And as we all know, in a divinely ordered universe, everything must make sense. We also must have an awareness of this because the dark side is playing a very insidious game with us, the people of the planet Earth, the purpose of which is to trick us into giving up our spirit and our freedom. If we are unaware of the game and how it's played, we will probably get sucked into playing it without even knowing it. There are many in the so-called New Age community who go a little nuts when I talk about this. They say that we shouldn't talk about it or even think about it, because when we do, we give it energy and we actually empower it. So we should just ignore it and hope it goes away. As you will see, this is really quite silly. Exactly the opposite is the case. And after we go through this, you'll see why. But before we go any farther here, let's define exactly what we're talking about and how all this works. What do we mean by the dark side? The dark side refers to an extremely small group of people, or beings, who are perpetrating a monumental hoax on the people of the planet Earth, at least those in the civilized world. They are often referred to by other names, such as the Illuminati, the elite, the global elite, the shadow government, and many others. I call them the dark side because their agenda is indeed dark, and I don't think we should beat around the bush. The dark side own and control the planet Earth, and this is nothing new. It's been going on for thousands of years. They operate entirely behind the scenes through deceit, manipulation, and worse. They own everything, and they use this awesome power to create a vast illusion. An illusion in which people see themselves as free, when in fact they are slaves. The base of their immense power is the international banking establishment, which, contrary to what we are told, is responsible for the creation of our paper money, a system designed to make slaves of all of us. They own all the huge multinational corporations, which produce the vast majority of the world's material goods, including our petroleum-based sources of energy, a massive grid upon which the people of the world are hopelessly dependent. They own our systems of information, including all the major media outlets and systems of education. Television, and more recently the internet, controlled by the dark side, are probably their most effective means of manipulating the masses. And last but not least, they own all the major governments of all the major nations, which are mere puppets, hired guns of the global elite, operating behind the hoax of representing the people. And just for the record, in the U.S., this includes both major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, which on the surface appear to represent different agendas, but which in fact represent precisely the same agenda: control, not freedom. And the same principle applies to all the other major nations. The seeing eye at the top of the pyramid, which is displayed on the U.S. dollar bill or Federal Reserve note, is one of the dark side's favorite symbols for themselves. They see themselves as the illumined ones, perched at the top of the pyramid of power, divinely ordained to rule the world, much like the kings and queens from several centuries ago. In fact, they were these kings and queens, as well as the gods of antiquity that were referenced in innumerable ancient religious scriptures and texts from all around the world, and in legends and myths such as Mount Olympus. How did they pull this off in the modern world, you might ask? One of their primary tactics is the use of a vast network of secret societies. Some of these are more visible than others, such as the Council on Foreign Relations in the U.S. Others are almost totally secretive, such as the Bilderberg Group in Europe. These meetings, which are by invitation only, are attended by the world's wealthiest people, or their hand-picked representatives from the world's banking, business, religion, the royal families of the world, media, and yes, politics, the lowest profession of them all. It is here where the decisions that shape the world are made. And their intent is not to shape a world in which all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Quite the contrary. And this is where things do get quite dark indeed. An essential feature of the illusion they create is a world that is in a state of constant crisis and chaos, and in which people are in a state of constant fear and helplessness. People are much easier prey when they're in this state. Our world is not this way naturally. It's all a part of the manipulation of the dark side. With their awesome power, they have the ability to engineer disasters in the form of wars, financial collapses, disease, and more recently, environmental calamities, and more. They've been doing this for thousands of years, and the result is always the same. The people who are frightened and devastated look to the system for salvation, as they've been conditioned to do. And the dark side rides into the fray on their white horse with the solution, which is always the same. More power in their hands, or that of their puppet governments, at the expense of the liberty of the people. The overall objective of the dark side is something they call the New World Order. The New World Order is a fascist world government, controlled from the top of the pyramid by the dark side, according to the principles outlined here. This would consist of a world government along the lines of the UN, which is a stepping stone toward this end, a world military, and again the UN security forces are a model for this, a world central bank, and a world system of money, probably in the form of non-paper, debit card, or digital money. And again, the dark side is way ahead of the game in this area, with institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund already in place. And the crown jewel of all this? A world database, which would contain all of our most personal information, and in which we could be scanned and tracked in everything we do, either by a global ID or ultimately microchip implants. Obviously, all of this is perilously close to happening. And here is where the matter of 2012 and the shift enters the picture. The dark side is well aware of 2012 and the shift, and the powerful forces of change that could be unleashed. Since they are a primary player in everything that happens in the world, does it not follow they will also be a primary player here? They too have a timetable for the fulfillment of their New World Order, and it appears they are stepping up the pace of this to coincide with 2012 and the shift. They want to get their New World Order in place so it will not be threatened by any of the other forces of the shift over which they don't have control, such as earth changes, or the awesome power of our spirituality when we hit critical mass. The dark side is acutely aware that the greatest point of their vulnerability is masses of people waking up to the truth. So there's our thumbnail sketch of the dark side. I think it's pretty obvious why this is so important and why it's essential to include it in our discussion of 2012 and the shift. But now that we know this, what do we do with it? And let's also address the allegation of the New Agers that when we talk about this, we empower it. The answer is simple. We simply need to remind ourselves of what we already know. The one thing that matters above all else in relation to 2012 and the shift is the power of our spiritual ascension, which means our capability to create the new world of light and spirit with the power of our vibration of peacefulness, joy, gratitude, and reverence. This is also the source of our protection, and this includes our protection from the New World Order. It is essential that we have an awareness of the dark side and how this game works, because only through this awareness are we capable of disentangling ourselves from this insidious web of illusion that is spun around us. Once we have this awareness, we don't need to spend any more time on this. We simply disengage from it and place our focus on what really matters, and that's getting our energy right with our spirituality, raising our vibrational frequency. It also means disengaging from it practically, as in not playing all the dependency and helpless victim games that the mainstream system tries to force us to play. And in response to the New Agers, we can be aware of the dark side, or anything, and talk about it, think about it, without empowering it. Conversely, to not be aware of something that's tricking you into giving your life away, now that's empowering. But besides that, we only empower something with our talk and with our thoughts when we become obsessed with it, when we get stuck in it, without knowing how to get out. We empower something when we give into feelings of fear or helplessness in relationship to it. There are those who do empower the dark side by the attention they give it, and they all make the same mistake. They deal with the subject without the awareness of the spiritual solutions, which are the only way we can defeat the dark side. And yes, without this, the topic of the dark side can indeed become overwhelming. And to those New Agers who accuse me of being negative because I talk about this, I say our awareness of the dark side is the most positive thing imaginable. Why? Well, let's start with because it's the truth. But beyond that, because it gets us, human beings, off the hook. We live in a culture that has gone absolutely insane. One in which human beings appear to be incapable of managing their own existence. Our world is one of constant warfare, epidemic levels of physical and mental sickness, worldwide famine and starvation, and humanity is on the verge of destroying the very environment it needs to survive. And we're told that it's our fault. We, the people, are making a total mess of planet Earth through our own ignorance, greed, savagery, and depravity. And this is the way God made it, so there's nothing we can do about it. Well, it's all a bunch of poppycock. When we learn about the dark side and the New World Order, one of the first things we figure out, if we're thinking, is that the world is the way it is as part of an agenda that goes back a long time. Part of a dark design that does not have the welfare of human beings as its goal. The sorry state of our world is not the result of our natural development. It is the result of deceit and manipulation, and how that natural development has been tampered with. So yes, this is the most positive news of all. Now we can begin to look at ourselves differently. We no longer need to see ourselves as part of some kind of cosmic insanity or original sin. Now we can see ourselves as we truly are, as reflections of the divine, and as potential co-creators of the new world of light and spirit.